pod moth.
What time is it? Let me check my watch. Oh, it's bone o'clock. In olden days, a glimpse of femur was only for morbid dreamers, but you're not alone. Bring anything bones. Two goofy gals with deathly interest go on a skeleton inquest in your headphones. Anything bones.
Hello and welcome to Anything Bones. I'm Sophie Schwartz.
And I'm Caitlin Hart, and we're here to talk about bones.
And bone-related topics. And since it is the week of Thanksgiving, and we're in a family type of way, we have a member of our own little podcast family on the podcast today, Seattle comedian and improviser and member of the Stoner Chicks podcast, Kayla Teal is here with us today.
Hey, I'm so happy to be back here with you. I miss you too. I don't see you often enough.
Oh, we must change that.
Agreed.
So glad to have you back for some more bony stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm bone-licious right now. I'm chomping at the bone.
When you have Thanksgiving, do you like a drumstick?
I do like a drumstick, although no, I don't. I lied to you. I like buffalo wing drumsticks, but turkey, I just like that dark meat with that juicy gravy.
Ooh, yes. My favorite part of Thanksgiving is the desserts. I'm a pie person. I just want to get into that pumpkin pie, maybe with my bare hands, and just num it up.
Yeah, so, okay, Kayla, what's your favorite part of Thanksgiving? Because turkey isn't always the star of the show.
No.
Well, as a kid, it was sparkling cider.
Ooh, in like a champagne glass?
Yes.
Hell yes.
Yeah, and I was so excited to finally drink alcohol at Thanksgiving dinner until I realized that then I wouldn't have sparkling cider anymore. So now I just double fist it.
There you go.
Yeah, I was going to say, why not mix them together? Also, Martinelli's does taste better than champagne.
It's so delicious.
It's a little bit of a disappointment where you're like, it's going to get me drunk, but it doesn't taste as good.
My favorite part of Thanksgiving is always the stuffing.
Yes.
Ooh. Doesn't your family have a good stuffing recipe, Katoon?
We do. Well, there's always multiple stuffings in my household because we have some gluten-free family members. So there's like a gluten-free one that I'll always try, and then there's a gluten one that I'll also just absolutely pack my plate with.
And then there's stovetop, which is just, it's its own thing.
It is, yeah. One time I made this like crock pot chicken with stovetop stuffing on top, and it was so good. Just a salty treat.
Yeah, I'm a savory gal.
I was going to say, speaking of like trash treats of Thanksgiving... And the absolute antithesis, I believe, of a bone, which is the canned cranberry log.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely goopy.
Yeah, I have to say, in my stonier days, perhaps alone at a parent's house on break from college, might have eaten that stuff straight out of the can.
I don't like the cranberry sauce, like kind of any kind. I'll usually just be like, it's just not my thing. If I'm going to have a sauce...
But it's the blood!
Yeah, but gravy's the sauce. That's what I want.
Yeah, cranberry sauce for me is also like, I'll taste it every time.
Sure.
Being really open-minded, and then I'm just like, that was a good taste, but that's all I need.
You know, I'm secure to stand alone in my love of cranberry anything.
Well, now I'm salivating for Thursday.
Yeah, holy shit. It's the Sunday before...
Yeah.
And I'm getting randy for this meal.
I hope all the boneheads out there are gonna do something that makes them happy, whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever you're doing for Thanksgiving, I hope it's what makes you happy. But you know what makes me happy?
Skeletons?
Yeah, talking about bones.
I think I'm gonna kick things off today with a old-timey murder. I thought I'd take us back to the 1860s. In just after the Civil War, and I'm going to tell you about the Bloody Bender family.
Whoa.
Oh.
Have either of you ever heard of them?
No.
Not off the top of my head, no, but I love a family that works together.
Oh, you will eat those words. No.
I can't wait.
Okay, so my sources for this were Mental Floss, crimereads.com, and then a CNN article. I would have read more articles, but I literally changed topics at the last minute. I don't know if that ever happens to y'all, but what I was researching ended up just being so grisly that I had to put it aside.
Oh, God.
And that's in context of everything we've covered.
It was just too much for me. I don't know if it's just the mood I'm in or what, but I was just like, I can't cover this today. So, Bloody Benders.
Here we go.
So, this story takes place in, the Kansas Territory area. Remember, the states weren't quite what they are today at this point. So, we start out strong. We start out with a big, big hit of racism. So, when the Homestead Act of 1862 passes, the Native Americans in the territory, which was from Labette County to Oklahoma, they wanted to make that territory available to European settlers, so they just moved them away. Just said, you have to go now. You have to leave your home.
Probably not peacefully.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So when this is happening, these European settlers are coming over to the tune of about 5 families, just 5 families to this little area, which is called Osage, Osage. And this is about 7 miles from the city of Cherryvale. So if you've ever heard of that, somewhere in Kansas area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Really?
No.
Oh, fuck off. So one of these 5 little families that settled here were the Benders. So this is a pretty small town, so everybody was kind of in each other's business, it seems like. So the family consisted of 2 men and 2 women. So there was John Bender Sr. and John Bender Jr., so father and son. They came first, and they were a lot of this we have to take with a grain of salt because, of course, the time period and the historical record doesn't always agree with all the little facts of this. But we think that they were German immigrants. The older John Bender was probably around age 60. They thought that he really only spoke German. And then the son was about 25 and he spoke English, but he also spoke German. This is the best. He, quote, had a habit of laughing aimlessly that led some to label him a half-wit.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
So
he's laughing to himself. He's probably just funny. He's like, I'm hilarious.
Yeah. He was just having a nice time. And everybody was like, I'm miserable. I want to bring everybody around me down.
He's thinking of good burns about the people around him.
So the father and son came first. And then mother and daughter arrived in 1871. This was Elvira Bender. She was called Ma, and the older one was called Pa. Older man was called Pa. And then her daughter was named Kate. Now, Elvira had a bad reputation. The neighbors called her the she-devil.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
It didn't seem like Ma got along with the townspeople very much, but Kate spoke English fluently, and she also worked as a healer and a spiritualist. She would hold seances, try to cure illnesses, and she would give lectures on spiritualism. So she gained kind of a reputation around this little town.
Oh boy, you gotta be careful with that back then.
Yeah. Just, that's kind of a little fun fact. It doesn't super play into the story, but it's just little interesting tidbit.
But we have had a string of women who have been kind of fortune tellers and thieves and then later killers.
Yeah.
So it's kind of in the profile.
Yeah, it's not far off. So Kate, the daughter, is about 23, and then Ma is probably in her 50s or 60s. So the family reunites in this area in Kansas, and they make a little cabin. They make this little 1-room cabin, and they split it in half with a piece of canvas. So, really chic and probably tasteful. and private.
That sounds like something that you would do in an apartment when you were trying to fit a couple more roommates in there than the lease allowed.
Yeah. Just get a
The
folding
privacy curtain.
screen.
Oh, God.
Yeah, just like, this is your half of the living room, this is my half of the living room, and Johnny sleeps in the tub.
So in this little cabin where half of it was their house, the other half they turned into a little, like, kind of general store, it sounds like. They would also feed travelers, and sometimes they would stay the night. Some sources said that Kate would, like, lure them in with her promises of spiritualism, but I don't know about that.
Spiritualism, eh? Winky winky nudgy nudgy?
She was just hot, right? They were just...
Yeah.
Yeah, she was new to town, and they were all, like, down. So, I don't know. But remember, this is a time where a lot of people are coming through the area. There's a lot of turnover. Nobody is seeing the same face twice, it kind of seems like. But by the fall of 1872, people had started to notice that a lot of travelers were disappearing in that area, never to be heard from again. So travelers started avoiding this area, like, as much as possible, and then there were vigilante groups that kind of formed and were trying to figure out what was going on. It didn't work, but they tried.
I mean, the valiant effort.
Nice try, everybody. So what really tips the scales, I guess, is the disappearance of a man named George Newton Longcore, and that's spelled Longcor, so I'm guessing on the pronunciation there. So his wife dies, and Longcore takes his 18-month-old daughter, her name is Marianne. They are traveling to Iowa, but nobody ever hears from them. So their neighbor, a guy named Dr. William Henry York, is, like, upset about this and wants to find out what happened. So he goes off and he goes to look for them. This is spring of 1873. So he's questioning people along the trail, and he thinks he found the items that belong to Longcore and his daughter. But he, unfortunately, as he's moving along in his investigation, he spends a fateful night at the Bender's place.
Buddy, no.
And, of course, is never heard from again.
Oh, dear.
The thing about this guy, Dr. York, he has two very prominent, powerful brothers. One is a colonel, his name is Edward York, and the other is a senator in Kansas named Alexander York. So they are fired up about their missing brother.
Oh, shit. These people killed the wrong dude.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, uh-oh, this is a mistake.
This always seems to get them in cases like this. They always pick somebody that they think nobody will miss, and then it turns out, oh, they have a whole family that loves and cares about them. Who'd have thought it? Like, could be possible.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. I'm sorry.
Aw. Well, I mean, it's good that in some of these cases, you know, they get cracked down by the family being like, hey, we're gonna find ya. Thanksgiving, family.
Yeah. The family that slays together stays together, right?
Exactly. Whether you're the good guys or the bad guys, it takes a village.
I already regret saying Pa was funny. He's not funny. He's a half-wit.
No, we're...
He's a dirty, unfunny bastard.
I don't even know what he's done quite yet.
Yeah, we'll get to it. We're getting there. So they're the two brothers, the York brothers are investigating, and they actually go to the Bender's property and they question them. And of course they deny any involvement in anything. But Ma apparently, quote, flew into a violent passion when asked about a report of a woman who had been threatened with pistols and knives at their inn. Ma defended herself by claiming that the visitor had been a witch, a bad and wicked woman whom she would kill if ever she came near them again. Sounds like someone I want to be buddies with, not enemies.
I mean, a little hypocritical, given the fortune-telling and spiritual aspect of the daughter.
Right, a little bit. And also, one of my sources said that Kate, at this point, offers the brothers her psychic abilities to help find Dr. York.
Oh, Oh, that's great.
She's like, you just got to come back in a few days and I'll be ready to help you. So around this same time, the town has a meeting. Remember, there's only a few families there. And so both of the father and the son are in attendance, the Johns, as I like to call them. I don't know.
Yeah.
So because this is the 1800s, everybody's like, we're just going to search everybody's house. So there can be no question about where these missing people may or may not be. And so they come up with this plan, and then I guess the weather turns, so they don't start their search for a few more days, which is a mistake. Somebody notices that some farm animals are wandering around the Bender property, and they don't look well cared for. Some sources said they were already dead when they arrived, but basically everybody finds out that the Benders have vacated their farm. There's no... Oh. Well, it's not a farm. They've vacated their land and cabin and store.
And animals.
And animals, I get, that's why I said farm, I think.
And they didn't take their big sheet with them?
No.
That they hung in their house?
So they go into the cabin, and something doesn't smell quite right.
Literally?
Yeah, literally. They find a trap door nailed shut. And when they open it, they find an empty room where the smell is just like clotted, nasty blood, just like festering under the floor.
How many? We're talking here?
We don't find anything in the trapdoor other than this nasty blood, but then we make our way to the orchard, and we do find Dr. York along with between 10 and 21 bodies, depending on what source you look at.
Just laying around?
Buried in the orchard, but yes.
See, yeah, this is why you don't stay at an inn that's divided by a sheet.
Yeah, that's not an inn. That's a mistake. So here's what we think happened. We think that, well, here's what the bodies tell us. The bodies tell us that the victims were hit in the head, and then they also had their throats slit. But they also find the little girl, Marianne, from the beginning of the story, and they think that she may have been buried alive.
No, wait. Who is Marianne again?
So originally, Dr. York went searching for his missing neighbor and an 18-month-old daughter that had gone missing.
Okay.
And apparently they both end up at the Bender's place and both end up buried in the orchard. Well, all three of them.
Wow, fuck these people.
Yeah. I mean, when you're the only inn in town, I guess could happen.
More of an out than an inn.
Hey, exactly.
Hello.
I'd rather sleep on the ground.
So here's what we think happened based on a bit of evidence that we can collect and stories of some possible survivors. So guess they had to sit in this particular spot at the dining table, and that was right up against, they had their backs to the canvas. So the canvas curtain that is dividing the cabin in half, they're right up next to it. And then they're above the trapdoor, or right next to the trapdoor, obviously. The victim's sitting down, he's chilling, about to have some soup or something, and then one of the Johns knocks him out with a hammer, and then one of the women slits their throat, and then they get dropped through the trapdoor, quote, stripped and later buried or dismembered.
So truly there is a lot of teamwork at play here.
Yeah, exactly. Like they do this together is what the evidence suggests.
Yeah, how do all four of them happen? Like, how did all four of them become psycho killers? Like, did one turn first, or did they all experience shared trauma that made them killers? Like, why were they just playing with people like this?
This type of killer it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's like kind of a shared psychosis in a way.
Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of a thing.
Yeah, hold on to that thought. We're going to see more about the family aspect. So there wasn't really any kind of victimology that they were looking for. It seems like they just killed at random whenever they wanted to. So there were also some bullet holes in the wall. So likely there were some victims that maybe tried to fight back, or, it's the Old West. Who knows what's going on?
I mean, it can't have gone perfectly every single time.
You are 100% correct, you smarty smart. So there's a guy named Mr. Wetzel. I don't know if he...
Pretzels?
I was just going to say, I don't know if he went on to create the most delicious pretzels of all time. But he remembers, he says, I don't know if he says to the paper or if he testifies or what, but we learn that he has been to the inn and he was like, I will not sit in this spot that everybody's trying to make me sit in. And then because he wouldn't sit there, Ma gets really angry and like frustrated at him. And then he sees the John's Pa and the younger John coming around from the cloth and he's like, let's get the fuck out of here. And apparently a guy named William Pickering had a similar story. We're finding all this out. The family is nowhere to be found. We find all these bodies. We find this trapdoor. Obviously, this creates an absolute media frenzy for, the 1800s. Almost over 3,000 people just show up at the crime scene in droves. My source here says, this is from a book called The Five Fiends, or The Bender Hotel Horror in Kansas, described how, quote, large numbers of people arrived upon the scene who had heard of the diabolical acts of bloody murder and rapacious robbery. Hardened men were moved to tears. The house in which the murders took place was disassembled and carried away piece by souvenir seekers.
Whoa, all the true crime junkies showed up and were like,
Yes.
I gotta see this.
Let me see this fucking thing.
I do also have a vision of these 1800s men in their tiny mustaches and their perfect suits, and they walk up to the crime scene and someone tells them what happens. They throw up their arms and they're like, wah, wah!
A chance to publicly cry.
Yeah, a chance to they got dumped a couple days ago, so they're like, I'm gonna go to this crime scene and everyone's gonna think I'm crying about the murder. But it's really Jessica!
Punch down all my feelings!
Yeah.
My daddy doesn't love me.
So, what we do find in the cabin is a German Bible, which identifies the younger John as John Gebhardt. So, what we've come to find out, potentially, is that John and Kate may have actually been a couple and not brother and sister. And it's also suspected that none of their real last names were even Bender. People think that Elvira is a woman named Almira Mark, who is said to have had multiple children and husbands, who maybe had some saucy bad endings along the way. I don't know what saucy bad endings means. She might have killed them. Who knows?
Oh, gosh.
I would call that a saucy bad ending.
Yeah. Pa, John Sr., we think was John Flickinger. And we also think that Kate was actually Elvira's child named Eliza. So it's very possible that only the mother and daughter are related, and that brother and sister are actually together, or just platonically working together.
So this is this mother-daughter murder orgy that they changed their names probably because this had happened before.
It's
doing
very
this
possible.
And then ditching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of answers your question about how, you get a whole family to murder people. They're not a family, they're a gang.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's a lot of, basically, this is totally unsolved. We have no idea what happened. Various vigilante groups claim to have found them and killed them, but we've never found, concrete proof. People have been arrested over the years that they think are Ma, Pa, or John or Kate, but it never seems to be concrete. So this murder is fucking crazy, and I'd never heard of it. I don't know about y'all, but I just I don't understand. What was I learning about in school?
When you started to get into the thing about the sheet, that's when I remembered that I had actually heard of this.
Oh, the sheet gives it away.
Well, it's just a weird detail, okay? Because it's part of their murder setup. And It's just the way that they killed people was such like a weird Rube Goldberg machine of murder where like it's like, okay, I pop out from behind the sheet and hit him over the head, like you come in and slit his throat and then Ma will pull the lever to like release the trap door, like,
and then we take his shit, dismember him, and throw him in the garden.
back in the orchard with ya.
Yep. So according to CNN on February 6th, 2020, the Bloody Benders land, or they had amassed about 152 acres of land. It was for sale, put out by auction by the Schrader Real Estate and Auction Company. Of course, the cabin is no longer there. This was way too long ago. But there is a historical marker that is still there that I just want to read you what it allegedly says. Quote, "Although stories abound, the ultimate fate of the murderous Bender family is uncertain. Some say that they escaped, others say they were executed by a vengeful posse. Their story is unresolved and remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the Old West."
Ugh. Amazing. Very
Thank you.
good.
Thank you.
Very good.
The Bloody Benders.
God, what a classic. What fucking murder perverts.
Yeah, murder perverts, indeed. Well, thanks, Caitlin. I think I'm next. I reached out to you because I finally had an idea for something to tell you about, and that is the Salem witch trials.
Woo!
So I took a day trip. I was just visiting friends in Connecticut and New York and had a day where I had nothing going on and no one to see. And so I was like, oh, I think I'm only like 3 hours away from Salem. And it was October, so I just was like, gotta go. Went up.
You have to.
Yeah, spent a whole day there, spent the night there, did the little solo trip, and just wanted to report back.
Amazing.
I learned
Yes,
so
please.
much while I was there, and everybody knows, like, I mean, remember we talked about it in maybe history class, but definitely English, because we read The Crucible.
Yes.
But it was so cool to be there, and I did a walking tour, which is one of my sources, the Bewitched After Dark tour, and my tour guide was Sarah, and I thought she was the coolest person I'd ever met. I was like, do I want to go back to school for history and move to Salem like Sarah?
Yes.
Yeah, it was the classic, like, do I want to be her or do I love her? I think I want to be her. So Sarah from Bewitched After Dark tour, the interactive play called Cry Innocent, The People vs. Bridget Bishop by History Alive Incorporated, the City of Salem Witch House tour, and historyofmassachusetts.org.
Oh my god. I'm so excited.
Me too.
So the Salem witch trials happened in Salem, Massachusetts over the course of like a year and a half from 1692 to 1693 in a community of Puritans, so folks who fled England for religious freedom and instead just settled down and made their religion have tons of rules. And
Yeah.
Came to America to make one of the most oppressive religions.
truly. And yeah, long story short, they're kind of assholes, at least the people that ran this society. But they believe that men and women are equal in the eyes of God, but unequal in the eyes of the devil. And that women are, you know, more naturally sinful, therefore more susceptible to the devil's trickery.
Oh.
100% facts.
God.
Yeah. I know.
Me and the devil are always hanging out. He's like, pull a prank. I'm like, I don't have time.
I don't have time, devil. I'm so busy.
I don't have time to fill a bucket of water and put it on the door and wait for someone to walk through it.
Like in Parent Trap. Witches being accused, burned at the stake, yada yada, was a big thing in, you know, Europe for a long time. But this situation just happens to be one where things got a little out of hand, to say the least. In this community, the first girls who made accusations of witchcraft were only 9 and 11 years old, and they were behaving strangely, like having a lot of tantrums, being, you know, having some physical tics. They were just being weird, and a doctor diagnosed them as bewitched.
Yes, a doctor diagnosed them that.
Yes, so when a doctor basically couldn't figure out what was wrong with somebody, he would, you know, witchcraft. So,
Yes.
not his fault he can't figure it out.
Well, I mean, they had like 5 diseases back then.
Right.
And one of them was witchcraft.
Yep. And so these girls, when questioned, did it? Who bewitched you? They accused Tituba, an enslaved woman from Barbados, who was arrested a few days later and confessed to witchcraft.
Ugh.
So I think Tituba might be a character in the Crucible. I can't remember.
The name is so familiar.
Think so, yeah.
Yeah, so after Tituba confessed, the town panicked. They were like, holy shit, this woman who is a witch, confessed witch, has been like babysitting all our kids. And we're fucked.
Yeah. And I'm sure that confession was voluntary, by the way.
Yeah, it took a few days, so who knows what they were doing to her. But I asked my tour guide, Sarah, why do you think she confessed? And Sarah said that she thinks it was kind of like self-preservation. Like, if I confess...
Oh, probably 100%.
Yeah, I can be like an informant, basically, and not get killed by these insane white people.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Like, okay, you all want to go on a witch hunt? Go ahead, but I'm going to do what I need to survive. Because that's what I've been doing this whole time, being with these people anyway. So there's a lot of theories about why the kids started acting this way, and historians are pretty sure they know the right answer. Of course, they can't be 100% sure, but a theory that is commonly circulated is that there was a bacteria in the rye bread that the town was making. Because in rye bread, there's a bacteria that's essentially LSD, that if a bread ferments too long, you can get kind of poisoned by it.
What?
Wow.
So the kids were exhibiting symptoms of that, but health professionals looking back are like, well, if they were really being poisoned by rye bread, they would have been having other symptoms that were not reported. So that's why the rye bread theory has been debunked.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe they were just shitty children.
Yep. Shitty Puritan children, indeed. So I don't know if you remember what it's like to be 9, 10, 11 years old, but when some drama's going on, like, you can get swept up in it, so much easier than even as an adult. And these kids that were making these accusations were getting a ton of attention. They were being listened to by these leaders and used as witnesses in court, and it was all very exciting for them.
Of course.
And, you can convince yourself of stuff you can convince yourself of stuff at any age, but, when you're that young and you have, a big imagination and you live in this very oppressive society, you can have you can convince yourself of stuff, fuck with your own head. You don't need the rye bread. Yeah, it was a combo of them fucking with their own heads, their wild imaginations, and then just getting kind of power trippy.
Yeah. And especially the young girls who are so powerless in this society, were just got really swept up and caused mob mentality and mass hysteria, which is what modern day psychologists think happened, is a collective just panic. And to them, witchcraft was very real and a very real threat to their own families. So when the kids are all acting like The Exorcist is happening, everyone's just panicked and starts pointing fingers. Yeah, easily. And, good old-fashioned racism in there, too. Yeah, especially with Tituba, the one person of color in this community was the first to be arrested and accused. So, like I said, this gets really out of hand, long story short. And yes, it did get a little out of hand. And Puritans took advantage of this hysteria to start accusing people that they just didn't like. So people in the community that were generally disliked, or women who had certain power that the Puritans didn't like. For example, if your husband died, you took over the land deed. So they didn't like women owning property either. And so women who owned big properties were starting to get accused. And of course, those in the community that were not so religious almost became this culture war where everyone was pointing fingers at somebody that they just didn't care for. I mean, it's a great way to get rid of someone who you don't agree with. Totally. Yeah. Totally. And this is a quote from a book called The Societal History of Crime and Punishment in America that says a number of historians speculated as to why the witch hunts occurred and why certain people were singled out. These proposed reasons have included personal vendettas, fear of strong women, and economic competition. Regardless, the Salem witch trials are a memorial and a warning to what hysteria, religious intolerance, and ignorance can cause in the criminal justice system.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, obviously still prevalent today. I mean, when I think of mass hysteria right now, I think of like QAnon, that kind of thing. And if you think about
like vaccine myths.
Exactly. And if you can think about how many lives that those mass hysterias have taken already, like it's almost even, this pales in comparison to what's happening now, it seems. And
oh, yes.
They have the benefit of knowing nothing. And all the true information is available. They just are ignorant. So it's a different level of ignorance and evil. Sorry, off the pedestal.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And so the first death was Bridget Bishop. That's just one of the names that is popular name people know. All in all, there were 19 people hanged, 1 person pressed to death, and 4 died in prison while awaiting trial, including, I believe, a child.
Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really messed up. And while I was in Salem, just kind of walking around, there's so much, obviously, history there, but they had a memorial for all the victims where there were all these stone benches, and every stone bench had the name of a victim on it. And it was right bordered on the cemetery where all the bad guys of this story were buried. All the judges, all the people from the town that were making these accusations are all buried in this cemetery. And it was creepy as hell because I'm looking up like one headstone, which was a judge that sentenced these women to die. And not just women, there were many men accused as well, but I think about 78% were women. So that was interesting to visit. And then the town was, after all was said and done, and they realized that the girls were lying, the town was horribly embarrassed and tried to cover it up as much as they could. They even knocked down, like, any building that could be associated with the Salem witch trials, except for one. They got confused, thought one person's house was a different person's house, and they left one house up of one of the judges. And that house is still there, and I got to do a walkthrough tour of the judge's house, which was wild. I've never been in a house that old before. It was, I think, built in the 1640s, and pretty well preserved, and it just is kind of a little museum now. That's called the Witch House.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What was the vibe like in there, if I might ask? Like,
it was kind of dank and cold feeling. The staircase was really creepy looking. It was very narrow and windy and uneven, And
those old-timey stairs, like, what were they thinking?
I don't know. Trying to save space, probably, but they ended up probably... I mean, falling down those stairs, you'd be fucked.
I remember thinking that whenever I go to old buildings, it's like, was everybody just tiny? Or
oh yeah, actually that is part of it. I've heard somebody talking about that. Yeah, English people from back then were smaller than those today. But yeah, just giant fireplaces that would be almost an entire wall because they would be doing all kinds of different things on the fireplace, like cooking one thing here, this thing here.
Anything but magic.
Yeah, anything.
Oh yeah, no, don't do that.
But the vibe of the city is wild. There's all these old buildings, a bunch of houses that are in like hocus pocus and stuff like that, and it just has become this capital for paganism and the occult. And every shop is run by witches, bookstores, tattoo places, broom shops. Man. Like, it's so fun. And the commercialization of Salem is what actually led it to kind of big economic recovery. Because for a while, nobody wanted to go to Salem. It was creepy. It's creepy to go there, knowing what happened.
I mean, fair enough.
And the one other cool thing I saw in Salem that I wanted to share was there's this house called the Gardner Pingree House, where a guy named Captain Joseph White was murdered in 1830, and was the murder that inspired Edgar Allan Poe's A Telltale Heart, and is mentioned in the preface for The Scarlet Letter.
Wow.
And 2 local businessmen, George and Charles Parker, aka the Parker Brothers, board game guys, bought an English game called Cluedo and renamed it Clue and modeled the board after the layout of this house.
Yes.
So if you guessed Captain White was murdered in the bedroom with a club knife, you would win, because he was.
Mind fucking blown. That's so cool.
It was so cool. And I'd seen the house earlier that day and thought it was so beautiful. I took a picture of it, not knowing that was the house. And they have the actual murder weapon across the street at the Peabody Museum that he was murdered with, and that inspired Clue.
Damn.
Or the layout of the board, I guess I should say.
Yeah, sure. But that's a big deal. That we've all seen that house.
Did you put that on your Instagram story?
It might be in the post I posted, but I didn't label it or anything, but it is in there.
Because I when you went to Salem, I was creeping on your Instagram because you had a lot of cool pictures of the town going on. And I was like, damn, that looks awesome.
It was. I just was gushing over the architecture. Like, every single building was labeled for when it was built. And there was so many from the 1700s, 1800s, a few 1600s, but not many. Wild.
Oh my God.
Cool.
I dropped to the ground and have a history orgasm.
That's what was happening to me. I almost considered a change in career. I was nerding out so hard.
Yeah. And moving to a different coast.
Yeah.
And the only other thing, I guess I should talk about the bones in the story briefly. They don't have remains for any of the victims of the Salem witch trials, because they would kind of just very disrespectfully dump the bodies in near the woods and let the animals take care of it. However, there were 2 victims whose family took their bodies and gave them a proper burial. So those remains they have located, but out of, I think, 25 victims, only 2 skeletons are known about.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, it's very tragic. Very classic American justice system tragedy.
Yeah, one of the OG examples of how fucked up the criminal justice system is in America.
Yeah.
I mean, we can...
We could go on that for days.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse just got acquitted of all charges recently, so, I just, another atrocity.
A literal murderer.
Yeah.
A literal murderer. But... yeah, American atrocity, always rife with bones, but apparently not this time.
No, just 2. Just a few bones.
Just 2.
Just a few bones. Well, I mean, at least somebody could be properly buried among those people.
Yeah.
Great job, Kayla. Thank you for being our reporter on the ground.
Yeah. Of course, anytime. And I would recommend visiting there and getting at least 2 days, because there were so many things I wanted to do and I didn't have time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on that, I think we have to hop on our broomsticks and go to an ad really quick. Is that cool?
Hell yeah.
Cool!
Hey, podcast lovers. My name is Haley, and I run the Don't Identify podcast. I have been passionate about helping the unidentified get their names back ever since I found out I lived within miles of where Sherry Ann Jarvis, formerly known as the Walker County Jane Doe, was found. In my podcast, I tell the stories and provide information about unidentified people in hopes of reaching their loved ones and getting their names back. So come join me and help me advocate for these people. You never know, you could recognize someone's story.
All right, well, we've dropped ourselves down on the ground after that wonderful ad. Terrible. Again.
I levitated.
I fell off my broomstick like a clumsy bitch. I shouldn't lie to you guys. I tripped.
She stumbled, but she will get back up.
Yeah, fucking Caitlin just glides off, rides side saddle like a fucking queen.
Blowing a kiss, but also flipping you off.
That's what we call the Katoon double special. All right, so Kayla, I see your Salem witch trials, and I would like to raise you the Paris Catacombs.
Ooh.
So, there may not have been a lot of bones in our last story, but this one is chock-a-block full of bones. let's do sources really quickly. We have an article from Smithsonian Mag, Atlas Obscura, Wikipedia, thetourguy.com, Refinery29, a luxurytravelblog.com,
Yes.
thetravel.com, and of course, Ancient Origins.
Question, what is Atlas
Yes.
Obscura? I hear you all using that source all the time.
Oh, it's, I would call it like a travel website, and
Yeah.
also like a website for like lore and creepy places. They just are like a catalog of creepy and kind of macabre and unusual places all around the world, and they have like little articles about each place.
Yeah,
very
it's kind of
cool.
like a mix between like TripAdvisor and like encyclopedia of creepy stuff.
Creepy zones.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, I love it. I'm gonna start surfing that
Yeah.
site.
Honestly, you should, because anytime that I'm at a loss for something to do, I'll go on there and I'll pick a place that I'm interested in. Like last week, I talked about a grave in Tokyo. I just went to the tab about Tokyo and I was just like, I'm really interested in Tokyo. I want to do something about this, and just ended up finding it, going down a rabbit hole.
Cool.
But we're not in Japan anymore. We've gone to Paris.
Bonjour.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you for pronunciations because a bitch do not speak French.
Yeah, I might be able to help, but I reserve the right to say no, pass.
Is that how you say no pass in
No.
French?
Passe.
You're fucking passe. God damn it, let's get to these bones. So, the Paris catacombs kind of started off their life as limestone quarries. That's how they got dug out, these big long tunnels, and they were kind of on the outskirts of the city. And this is limestone is a natural resource that a lot of Paris is built out of, and also just aided in the city's growth in general. By the 18th century, Parisian cemeteries, the biggest one being Les Innocents, started getting really overpopulated. And this is kind of what we see as the origin for a lot of catacombs. We've definitely heard this story before. We got too many bones.
We gotta put them
Where are
somewhere
we gonna put
else
'em?
to make room for the other bones that are coming in every day.
Yeah, here is not working and there's only gonna be more.
Yep.
Also, people are living close to the cemeteries as well. Like, they are within the city, not on the outskirts. So people are living in close proximity to these overcrowded cemeteries. Also, we're getting a lot of improper burial and open graves, and people just kind of dumping bodies where there's room in these cemeteries, just kind of in the middle of town.
And just like hygiene in general wasn't good.
No.
Yeah, where were we tossing our poop these days? The street or
In the street, yes.
with the dead
This
bodies.
is poop in the street times, yeah.
Ew.
We got dead bodies, we got poop, we got peanut shells, we got it all. This is Paris, baby.
The Eiffel Tower
Chocolate
floats
food.
by.
Yeah. The Eiffel Tower floats by, flipping you off. No, this is way before the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, of course.
So it's 1763, and an edict is issued by Louis XV, and he's banning all burials in Paris, the city proper. The church, however, is like, we have an issue with this because we don't want to disturb our cemeteries, and so we're just gonna ignore this.
Yeah.
And they did for as long as possible, but until 1780, they ended up having in the springtime a particularly bad rain. And there was this cemetery, Les Innocents, that I talked about before, that was encircled by a large wall. And the wall gave out due to the rains and the flooding, spilling bodies and body parts into the street and neighborhood in general.
oh no, a bone slide.
Yes! Kayla! It was a bone slide.
Oh
Exactly,
no,
I'm
a
glad.
bone slide.
Oh no, a bone slide!
Oh,
Whoa! Now I'm thinking of a skeleton going down a red rubber slide.
like surfing on Wave of bones.
Yes.
I was picturing a
Yeah.
skeleton surfing on a wave of bones also. So
After this mass body escape from from Less Innocence, they started really looking at this problem a lot more seriously. They were like, okay, all right, we see your point. There's too many people here. So in 1786, the quarries were blessed and consecrated and turned into the Paris Catacombs. And it ended up taking 2 years to get all of the bones out of Less Innocence to the catacombs, which are like 5 stories underground. And they started emptying all of these cemeteries out. Less Innocence went first because it was the biggest, and it had exploded.
oh yeah, of course.
But it ended up taking the city about 12 years to move all of the bodies from all of the various cemeteries. And that's about 6 to 7 million corpses.
Whoa. That's
Yeah.
more corpses than I was imagining.
It's a lot of corpses. I'm telling you, if you just Google catacomb 9 out of 10, the first picture that will come up is a wall of skulls, and that's fucking Paris Catacombs. Like, they have all of the bones.
Can
They
you
have
go
them
walk
all.
through that there? Is
You
it a
can,
tourist thing?
and yeah, you can, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So they move all the bones there, and part of the reason that it does also take 12 years is that they do it all under the cover of darkness.
Oh,
Because-
because people would maybe be upset by this.
Hell yeah.
Huh.
You know, if you saw a parade of a guy just like with a... Although, French Revolution's coming up here real fast, so people better put that squeamish bone away because it's about to get gnarly. And speaking of course of which, you know, because of this edict and because they've started this process, French Revolution comes and hits pretty quickly after this. And during that time, they're like, yeah, we're just putting people in here. That's what we're doing now. And you kind of get everybody from, you know, your run-of-the-mill lay person to Maximilien Robespierre, who, if that sounds familiar to you, he's the guy who was the father of the Reign of Terror, which is where they guillotined the absolute fuck out of all of the nobles they could find.
Yeah, not very chill.
No, I would say that Maximilien Robespierre, of all of the historical people I'm aware of, had one of the least amounts of chill. I won't say the least. And from then on, we are just filling the catacombs with everyone who would be buried in the city, but they stop putting bones into the ossuary in 1860.
Wow.
So I would say that's still kind of recent, you know, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So 7 years after they end up stopping burying people there, they're like, you know what? I bet people do want to see this. So they do open it up to the public.
Yep.
And you can't, to this day, you can't go through all of it. You really couldn't, because it's about 200 miles of tunnels down there.
What the
Wow.
fuck?
Yeah, it was a quarry. It was a mine. So they were in there digging the absolute fuck out of the ground. So they had a lot of space to work with, and they had a lot of bodies to put somewhere.
Yeah. God.
But, of course, people will be people. So they're not going to stay in the allotted zones, right?
No.
So in 1955, it becomes illegal to enter most parts of the catacomb. You can now just go. I think it's a hefty fine and maybe some jail time.
So somebody
if you get
ruined
caught
it
down there.
for the rest of us.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll talk a lot more about that later, but... So, when you come into the ossuary, you walk under a doorway that says... Caitlin, may I send you this quote to say in French?
Okay.
Please?
Yeah, please.
If you insist.
Okay, it is. Arrête. C'est ici l'empire de la mort. And I think I can translate this.
Can you do it? Can you do it?
Stop. Here is the empire of the dead.
Hell yeah!
Wow.
Those 5 years
Hell yeah, Caitlin.
in elementary school and middle school and high school are really paying off.
That was boss. That was great. So, of course, inside the ossuary, the bones are actually grouped by the cemeteries where they came from. So, that's kind of nice. You get to room with your friends.
I'd like to be buried next to you in the Paris catacomb. So,
Aww.
Layla, you should come
Lovely.
too.
Yeah, bring the other stoner
Yeah.
chicks. We'll have a great time.
Aww.
Not for a long time, though.
Why does this part of the catacomb smell like weed?
It's the ghosts of the stoners from Seattle.
Ooh, how did they get in here? So, as bones were brought in initially, they just kind of were dumping them in piles because they had to get it done, you know. But then they were kind of reorganized by this guy, Louis Etienne Haricart. His name is longer than I thought it was. All right. Louis Etienne Haricart de Thury. And he oversaw, like, the complete kind of renovation of the catacombs to be what it is today, with the bones, like, grouped in different shapes. He had his team, like, stacking femurs and skulls to create, like, walls and different kind of configurations. And I have a picture for you. Here is one of these kind of barrel-shaped columns of bones.
Whoa. That's
This
nuts.
is so crazy.
It really
Right?
is like maybe like a 10-foot tall barrel-shaped thing of bones.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's got to be pretty thick because I'm guessing this is like the hit. You're seeing the ends of like a leg bone, like a femur.
Yeah, they're stuck in there.
Oh my god.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah, these will be up on the Instagram if you want to take a look at them, viewers. But like this is one that I was particularly impressed with. But you can find many pictures of the Paris catacombs. The bones are put into a lot of different shapes. We have hearts, crosses, that giant barrel full of femurs and skulls, which I thought was rad as hell. There are also other not bone related sculptures down there.
What?
Interesting.
I know, this blew back my wig. Because there was this guy, Francis Decoeur, who was like a quarry worker, and he spent a lot of time creating like these little sculptures in the quarry. I don't know if he was like allowed to do that, or if he was an artist and a quarry worker, and they were like, yeah, go ahead. But so these predate the catacombs themselves, being, you know, a place for bones. And he carved out this little model of Port Philippe and the Port Prison. And he was actually killed in a cave-in of the catacombs,
Oh.
which is very sad. But his work still lives down there, and we have a little picture of that if you want to take a look.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
That's actually really amazing.
He was busy down there. Is that carved out of rock?
Yeah. It's just carved into, like, you're walking along and that's, like, in the walls.
That is so
Yeah.
cool.
This story kind of reminds me of that guy in Fremont who stacks rocks. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
In Seattle, there's a guy that he all day, every day is just stacking rocks. And the area of Fremont has like roped off a section of sidewalk just for him to do what he does best, which is stacking rocks.
Aw.
Fucking stack those rocks, man. The world needs that kind of shit.
So do the catacombs.
Exactly. It's gotta be a fun surprise when you're like, this is all bones. And then you're like, hey, oh, miniature.
Yeah, there's a little like castle down here. What the hell?
Yeah. And speaking of things that are down there that probably, I wouldn't say shouldn't be, but we're going to talk about people who got lost down there.
Yes.
So during the French Revolution, there was a guy named Philbert Asperet, and he was a doorman at a hospital, and he was going to a liquor cellar to get some fucking booze to party, and he ended up getting lost down there and entering the catacombs.
Oh god.
Because he was maybe a little bit drunk. And he was walking around, like, in the pitch black. He only had, like, a little candle. And basically, he got very lost and confused. He couldn't figure out how to get out. And he eventually perished down there.
Oh god.
But his body was found 11 years later.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Nobody was missing
like-
him. That is wild.
Apparently not. Apparently
that's
he
sad.
went. Yeah. I mean, I bet there were people missing him, but I'm not sure if they guessed, oh, he went to get some booze, got lost in the catacombs, is wandering down there with a single candle.
Yeah, that's not the first place I would look for him.
No.
I don't know. I'm not Parisian, but, you know. So they find his body. It's not found by any sort of search party, kind of as Caitlin alluded, it's found by people exploring the catacombs. And they end up identifying him because he has the hospital key hanging on his belt. And there is a tombstone memorial for him in the catacombs, which I have a picture for you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is kind of fucked up, but did they just bury him down there? Or did...
Yes, they did.
Oh my god, yep.
Wow, cool. This is starting to look like a lot of video games I've played, where you get lost in tunnels and there's all these crypts and bones.
Strong Skyrim vibes.
Something like that.
Kind of Game of Thrones thrown in there as well.
Oh, sure.
And I mean, speaking of the supernatural, it's said that every November 3rd, Filbert's ghost haunts the catacombs and, like, talks to people. And there's definitely one of the prominent legends is that if you're in the catacombs past midnight, you'll start to hear voices telling you to come deeper into the catacombs.
Ooh.
And whisper to you and try to make you get lost down there.
Fuck. No,
Terrifying.
thank you.
Yeah. It makes my skin absolutely crawl. No, thank you. But there have been some interesting uses for the catacombs as well. During World War II, members of the French resistance had meetings down there trying to figure out how to fight against the Nazis, who also had meeting places down there as well.
God damn it.
So both teams were using the catacombs. There is another story of a person getting lost. This is more of a legend, but in the 1990s, there was a group they're called cataphiles, which are people who want to explore the catacombs.
They're not really into cats.
Or combs.
No. They like neither. They are dog people with ratty hair. But they were exploring the catacombs in the 1990s, and legend says that they found an abandoned, video camera, which had footage of a man who was down there exploring the catacombs and talking about how voices were driving him mad and how he was, so lost. And then the footage ends with, him dropping the camera on the ground and everything going black, you know? This cannot be confirmed or denied as real, but it gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have any horror movies or anything been made about the catacombs?
Yes. I think several. I think there's one called Catacomb. There's also one called As Above, So Below, which is based on this legend that we were just talking about.
I've seen that one.
Is it creepy?
Yeah, it scared the shit out of me.
I'm curious. I want to watch it.
I mean, it's like your worst nightmare, like being in a maze of bones and you don't know how to get out. It's kind of like Blair Witch Project it's a similar vibe.
Yeah. And some people have, of course, gotten lost in the catacombs and actually been recovered. There were two teens, I think in 2017, a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old who wandered down there and were lost for about 3 days until some search dogs found them.
Wow. I mean, number one rule in the catacombs, just stay where you are.
Yeah, seriously.
Don't keep
Just stay
walking.
where you are and wait to be found. Yeah, exactly. I want to end my catacombs segment on some lighter uses for the catacombs. Because not everyone is down there to experience hauntings and the beautiful bone art. In 2004, a group of police officers were searching around part of the catacombs, and they found some pretty interesting things. First of all, they encountered a PA system with pre-recorded guard dogs that were barking. And then they found a 3,000 square feet of galleries and weird pirated electricity. And they found inside here a bar, a living area, a workshop, a lounge, and a movie theater that sat 20 people.
What the fuck?
Oh. So there was like some kind of underground indie art scene down there.
Yeah, and after like looking around for a little while, the police realized that there were actually cameras in this like secret hideout.
So it was ongoing.
Yeah. It was ongoing. And so they leave, they kind of shut the place down and they leave, but they come back after a little bit and they find a note that says, Caitlin?
Ne cherchez pas. Which I think means don't find me?
Yeah.
Really?
Don't look for me.
Don't look. Yes!
Yeah.
Yes!
Oh, nice.
So the police, they had to just throw their hands up and be like, well, shit.
Yeah, that's too spooky for them. That's too spooky for me. No, thank you.
Yeah. And in the very last tale of the catacombs, I will take you on an Ocean's 11 style heist.
Oh my god.
Because in 2017, a group of thieves used the catacombs to access a vault of an apartment building, drilled through the limestone to get to a collection of vintage wine valued at $275,000.
What? So this was connected to a house? This tunnel?
Yeah. Yeah. You can get into people's fucking cellars and shit because, like we were talking about old architecture on the East Coast, Europe's on a whole other level.
Yeah.
They have, their cities are built upon layers and layers of what the cities used to be. And with the catacombs, it's these tunnels that connect all, so much of the city. So much is built on top of it. And like with our guy who was just looking for his liquor, can get from the catacombs into people's houses.
Whoa.
So they use the catacombs to fucking steal this wine collection.
And they got away with it.
Yeah.
That's
Peace.
I'm proud of them. George Clooney should be proud of them.
George Clooney somewhere is beaming with pride. And that concludes my little overview of the Paris catacombs. It's one of the most notorious catacombs in the world. It's a miracle we haven't covered it so far, but I thought I would bring it for such an auspicious guest.
Thank you. I didn't know anything about them, so that was lovely. And now I'm going to go nerd out about that on Google later.
Oh yeah, give yourself a treat and Google some pictures of this catacomb because, we've had bone chandeliers, we've had bone churches, but this is an underground Bonapalooza.
Yeah. It's buck wild.
Bonepopolis.
Yes, Bonepopolis.
6 to 7 million people, right?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Oh.
It's, everyone who was buried in Paris, starting at a certain time up until, the 1780s when they were like, we cannot keep doing this, you guys. We cannot.
After their leader said, don't do it anymore, and they were like, okay, wink, wink, 17 more years of bones.
Yeah, I mean, I wish on everyone 17 more years of bones, but, not if all of your cemeteries are overflowing. We gotta get our shit together, France.
Please. Well, good job, Soph, and thank you, Kayla, for coming back for round 2 of the Boney podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I love the pod, so after Salem, I hit you guys up and was like, I got some.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
Oh
so
my
glad
gosh.
you did. And everybody get over to Stoner Chicks Podcast, wherever you get this podcast, and hit subscribe. And I think you had something else you wanted to promote too, right?
Oh, sure. If anybody's in the Seattle area, December, there's a show I'm in, and so is Stephanie from Stoner Chicks, Uncle Mike Ruins Crispus, which is a holiday romp of raunchy humor, so it's not for the faint of heart. But if you consider yourself having a dark sense of humor, you may enjoy this cheeky Christmas show. So you can find out about it at jetcityimprov.org.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And last time you were here, your favorite bone was a whale skeleton, I believe. So what's your second favorite after that?
Good question. I think probably the ribs.
Ooh.
I like them. I'm afraid to break them.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they're fun.
They're so important. They keep all the good stuff in.
Yeah,
They
I'm grateful
really do.
for them specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
And when barbecued, quite delicious.
All right,
Not
everybody.
human ribs. Not human
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep on just eating animal ribs, not human ribs. Appreciate your bones, and then there's only one thing left. Bone voyage.
We love you.
Thanks for listening to Anything Bones. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Anything Bones Podcast, or email us at anythingbonespodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Nick Kruger for our spooky music and Stephen Vetteroff
At Chubby Scrubby on Twitter,
for our jazzy vocals, and thank you to Camilla Franklin
at Camilla Strader on Instagram.
for our beautiful bony artwork. Please rate, review, and subscribe.
Oh no, a bone slide.